who from this community has done more internationally and nationally than Harry Truman?
In doing some research into how many presidents are actually in Statuary Hall, there's only 7. You would think that maybe they're all there. No, only 7 presidents are in Statuary Hall, which means there's been only 7 sculptors, in the nation's history that have sculpted a president for the Capitol.
We must have the Harry Truman statue for a number of reasons. But one, it will generate more discussion about Harry Truman, the man.
Well, the genesis of the project really goes all the way back to efforts by Representative Emanuel Cleaver, who brought the idea and concept to the board of the Truman Library Institute, asking whether we would be prepared to support financially and commission a statue of Truman to be placed in the U.S. Capitol.
I think the world needs to know about this man from Missouri who did so much for this country and whose life, I think, is an example of what you can do in this country.
The process was one where we put out RFPs, requests for proposals, really on a national basis. I think it became pretty evident to the selection committee that we had an exceptional artist locally in Tom Corbin, who was recognized not only regionally but nationally for his expertise in sculpture and modeling.
This has to be the most significant piece I've ever worked on. It's going to be viewed by many more people than have ever seen any other of my public installations.
Tom Corbin has done a really incredible job of capturing not only the spirit of Harry Truman, and by that I mean you look at his face and you can see that this is a steely decision maker, but you can also see his humanity. You can see the sparkle and kindness in his face and his eyes. And also there's a fluidity of motion with the statue that I think is really special and probably unique to Corbin.
President Truman was truly, a common man. He was the guy next door. And he was always in motion. He loved to walk. And so with President Truman, we wanted to somehow generate motion. And to do this, we had a very small literal footprint to do that with. That's where we came up with the idea of him descending stairs, which generates motion right there. We wanted to make him appear to be walking down the steps of the Capitol, the White House, or his home in Independence.
What the committee was really going for was Truman during his presidential years. So we looked at a lot of official portraits to kind of nail those down.
When sculptors talk about maquettes, it's essentially a model, a working model for a piece that will eventually be enlarged. And so that's what we used in this case. We had a 3-foot model that we produced for the competition. And with that, then, we took that down to the Crucible Foundry in Norman, Oklahoma, to their enlarging studio, in which they computer scanned my maquette or model and enlarged that to, Harry is 7 feet 6 inches tall.
Once the maquette was approved and we were starting to talk about 8-foot Truman instead of a 3-foot statue of Truman, we got more into the nitty-gritty details.
I realized the most critical part of the enlargement was getting the head and the hands correct. That's where all the personality comes out of. So I returned to Kansas City with Harry's head and hands in tow, and I spent the last 6 weeks working on the heads and the hands.
Tom reached out to me and said, are there rings that Truman always wore, or a tie? What are those things that Truman always had with him? And so we dug down into the archives and made sure that Truman has his World War I pin that he always wore on his lapel. He has a Masonic ring, a 33, that he always wore on his left-hand pinky finger. And then we did a lot of looking into the kind of pocket square and different pocket square folds that Truman wore in different portraits.
The style of glasses that we ended up using were the glasses that Harry was used in his formal White House portrait.
Well, when we all were gathered in Tom Corbin's studio, I was delighted to see how embracing the Truman family was of what Tom had created.
It's great.
That looks great.
Thanks, Clifton.
Hey, Tom.
How are you?
It looks like him. He looks happy, so that's good.
We are still in the middle of a fundraising campaign for the Truman Statue Project. We need to raise about another $100,000 to cover all of the costs. It's been a really exciting project. People are responding really well to it. Donors from really all across the country, but in particular Kansas City and Independence have stepped up.
The sculpture is ready to go to the architect of the Capitol for approval. So we'll send photographs of Tom's full-size 8-foot sculpture along with the pedestal design and inscription. Once we receive their approval, we will let the foundry know that they are ready to proceed with their work, and they'll begin casting it in bronze.
The Truman Library Institute took this project on because it was a really obvious way for us to fulfill our mission to preserve and share the legacy of Harry Truman. The visibility of the statue, it will last for generations.
Bronze sculpture inherently will last, not for a couple of years, not for 10 years, or probably multiple centuries. My grandkids' kids will see it, and you can just, from a time frame, it's kind of mind-boggling the number of people that will see it, and not only my family, but people from not only from the United States, but from all over the world. So it's humbling. It's humbling.
Working on this project and investing in the Truman statue is an investment in something that's going to be there for a very long time.
This is a man who, for me, and for millions of other Americans who studied him, realized that he is a giant, and giants must always be remembered.